Hello. I wanted to come on and talk a little bit about yarrow and the different ways that you can work with yarrow, both fresh and dried, right? Like it's very abundant and it's broadly available and it has a long season. So if you're out and about, you can usually find yarrow around if you need it fresh. But I also want to give you an option of how you can preserve it and use it dried too. So here's some fresh yarrow that I just gathered from outside. And one of my favorite ways to work with fresh yarrow is as like a little bit of a bug repellent, like in a pinch, right? Like it's not the strongest stuff that you can use, but you can take it and you can rub it directly on your exposed skin. And it's actually very good for your skin, so it's gonna help like soften your skin a little bit. It feels really good, and I personally love the smell of yarrow. Not everyone does, but it works really good to just kind of perfume yourself with some yarrow when you're really getting slammed with different bugs. And if you wanted to make it more official, you could infuse it in some witch hazel for a few weeks and then use that as a spray for bugs. And if you add catnip to that too, it will also help keep ticks away. I feel like ticks are getting pretty aggressive, so it's not the strongest and you'd have to keep reapplying it, but it is an option if you want something all natural. You can also take fresh yarrow if you're out hiking and you get a cut, if you're out in the woods, if your dog gets a cut. It will help stop bleeding. And in order to use it that way, you can take the leaves and the blooms and you can chew them in your mouth, and the saliva will help activate the different chemical compounds in the yarrow. And then you can kind of take that, it would be called a poultice, when you get the moisture into the plant matter. And then you can take that poultice and directly apply it to a wound, even if it's really deep. The yarrow loves a deep cut and will help you. You could also make a poultice just by putting a little water in your hand and mashing it up, or you can do it in a mortar and pestle. Not that you'll have a mortar and pestle out on the road, but if you're at home and you need to do it and you're not comfortable with chewing it, but it's totally safe and fine to chew it. I will dry the rest of this, or maybe I'll make a tincture with it. Tincturing yarrow is another way that you can make it more potable and to last longer. So you would just take the fresh blooms, the fresh leaves, and put them in alcohol, either vodka or brandy, or you could do it in glycerin if you didn't want to use alcohol, and you let that sit for at least 8 weeks, and then strain the yarrow out, and you have a yarrow tincture, which also works in your first aid kit on a cut or a wound. It'll just burn more because it has the alcohol in it. So tincturing fresh yarrow is one way to preserve it. And then the other way that's really cool is that you can make it into a powder. So you dry the yarrow first, which I've done here. These are some dried yarrow blooms that I hung upside down for a few weeks until they got really dry. And then to make the powder, you strip the leaves and the blooms, which I've already done on some of these. And you can again either use your mortar and pestle if you want to be old school, which is kind of fun to do sometimes, or if you want to do it a little more quickly, you can do it in a coffee grinder. So I have this coffee grinder that I use specifically for grinding different herbs. You don't want to use the same coffee grinder that you use for coffee, right? So once you make this powder, you can put it in a little jar, and then that powder you can use in the same way that you would use the fresh yarrow, you can put the powder directly on a cut. And because yarrow has analgesic, pain relieving properties, it immediately reduces the pain that you're feeling. It has antibacterial, so it's going to help clean up the cut and prevent it from getting an infection, help prevent it from getting an infection. It has a styptic, so it stops the bleeding. Like, so it's stopping the bleeding, it's reducing your pain, and it's like sealing up the wound. All from this one plant, yarrow. Like, what? So you can mash it up in your mortar and pestle, put it in your coffee grinder, and then you can put it in a little jar and carry it with you in your first aid kit too. The other thing that you can do with the powdered yarrow is you can mix it into a face scrub, which is very cool. You can add a little hydrosol, or you could add a little bit of water and just use it directly on your face. Or you could add like a clay to it and do a whole mask. We'll talk more about skincare as we get into mugwort, which will be our plant for next month. But I hope that you meet yarrow. I hope that she tells you some secrets, and I hope that she will help you out there and know that you have an ally in yarrow when you get a cut or something and you need some help with bleeding or anything else. Like, she's very, very helpful. So I hope that yarrow will be there for you when you need her.